What's good, Fuji gang? We are back to discuss the 7 different reasons why I absolutely love this little bad boy, the Fuji X100v. And yeah, just give you a bit of a review after owning the camera for just over a year now, and just why I love it so much. I'll split this video into 2 different sections. We've got the fun factor and then we've got the training tool. They both like interloop with each other a little bit. You can skip around using the chapters below, or you can sit back, relax, enjoy this video, and probably get your credit card ready, because if you don't own this camera, I'm sure by the end of it you will. If at any point you find this interesting, or you like how I present these ideas, I guess, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And on that note, let's kick things off. So the most important thing to me about this camera is that it is so fun to use, and every time I use it, I just fall in love. I'm just like, why do I use anything else? And there's a couple different reasons as to why I think that this camera is so fun and why it is different to any other camera that I've ever used. There's no pressure for you to take a good photo with the Fuji X100v. And although that sounds ridiculous, it is the most freeing, motivating thing about this camera. And so how does this camera facilitate that? Because this camera is locked to 35mm, you can't shoot at anything else. There is no pressure to take the perfect photo at every single scene that you go to, and that is freeing. If you've got the holy trinity of lenses, Sony G Masters, Canon L series, whatever it is, you're kind of expected to be able to take banging photos everywhere you go, because you have no excuse, because your equipment is the best there is. And so with the X100v, you can still take those kind of classic photos, and if it works, fantastic. But chances are, you're going to get a better, more interesting photo if you're experimenting, because it doesn't look quite as amazing and grand as like the super telephoto or the super wide angle. And so you have to experiment, and so you're pushed to then try something new. And because you're trying something new, you're then testing your skills. You're learning new ways to do things. And so that means that you then stop taking the same photos everyone else has taken. You start trying different things. And because you're experimenting at 35mm, chances are a lot of your ideas are gonna suck. But that's fine, because you're only shooting at 35 and there's no pressure to take a good photo. It is honestly like a loop of creativity and experimentation and just passion for photography. And that has only ever come when I've been using this camera. Don't know, I'm holding it like this. This camera honestly embodies what it is to be a photographer, to enjoy photography. You can take this with you everywhere you go and use it to capture memories and experiences of your life, and to also inspire you to present that in an interesting way. That is all photography is. And this camera inspires me and anyone else that I know with the Fuji X100v to be creative, to try and experiment and do things differently. And that is the most freeing, most satisfying, most beautiful thing about this camera. I can honestly attribute so many of my photos to this camera. I would have never tried them on the Sony that I've got recording this. And whilst this camera does produce fantastic images, its focus isn't about pleasing the gatekeepers about edge-to-edge sharpness and other random metrics that photographers like to compare lenses by. It's all about making things simple to facilitate creativity, which is hands down the most important thing, and you can't argue with me on that. And because this is a little small boy, everyone is more relaxed around you. Your friends are much more likely to be candid and relaxed when you point this camera at them. And I don't know about you, but when someone points a big camera at me, I tense up a little bit, because I know that I'm being filmed. But if someone points their X100v at me, I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. I don't care, I'm naturally like this. And so you get those candid, beautiful memories, which is what photography is about. And in the street, you look like a film photography purist. And amongst public perception, there is a difference between film photographers and digital photographers. Digital feels very high tech. Feels like the images are going to be published somewhere, that there's a purpose for them, because why else are you going to be wandering around South Bank with £10,000 worth of camera equipment? Whereas film, it's just about artistic expression. And people just don't care about your artistic expression and will happily walk into your frame, candid as anything, they don't care, and that leads to beautiful street photos. And because of that, this little camera hides you in plain sight. You're able to get photos where you're like, yes, like, oh my God, like, how did I take that photo? That photo is beautiful. And that to me is the whole point of photography. I want something that inspires me to shoot more and more and to get out there and to enjoy the process of taking photos. And it's also kind of weird that this camera gives you a feeling of like endless opportunity. I can take amazing, beautiful photos on like a big client set and it look beautiful, but I can also take those super under the radar like little hip shots. And because of its size and weight, I can also stick this in places I would never dare put a DSLR. I love just sticking up as high as I can go and trying to shoot and find some different angles. Most other equipment that produces images as beautiful as this are massive, just so compact and light, and it just quadruples my creativity. This camera honestly inspires me to go out and shoot every day. Every time I hold it, I get this weird sense of the world is your playground. You can do anything you want, obviously within reason. And I just don't get that whenever I use any other system with interchangeable lenses. Maybe it's just me, but every X100v user that I've ever met has absolutely loved their camera. And the last fun factor point is that most people who get this camera, in my experience anyway, have come from different systems, and this is their first Fuji camera. And there is something so fun about shooting with the profiles and presets already loaded into the bad boy. You can just bang out an image straight from the camera and it be ready to share on Instagram or wherever you want to post it. Whereas when you shoot raw, you kind of have to do some editing, you have to add a bit of contrast, you have to do a bit of X, Y, and when you show people, you're like, this isn't the final image. But with this, you're like, fuck yeah, look how sick that is. And I literally exclusively use classic chrome and Acros because I'm a sucker for them blues and a good black and white. I've got to formally apologise to any Canon users who are currently watching this, but the colour science of the Fuji system actually bangs. Not only is this camera super fun to use, this is hands down the best training tool for photography you can buy. Let me explain. By limiting yourself to one fixed focal length, you are able to understand and appreciate how different elements of a frame are able to be moved and manipulated to your desired result. One of the skills you start developing is you are able to change the relationship of different elements within your frame. You are able to eliminate things, cut things out. You are able to bring elements closer together to make them look like they had some sort of relation, to move them further apart, to make them seem like they have no relation. And by understanding this, your brain is then able to understand how it can then manipulate these elements to create your desired frame, to tell the desired story that you are trying to portray. And to me, this is the skill that the big dogs are best at. Your Joel Morowitz, your Steve McCurrys, because although they do go to interesting places, their experience of life is the same as ours, yet they are seemingly able to create compositions out of nothing. And I think that this is because they have a higher tier understanding of how they're able to manipulate different elements they want to include and want to not include in their photos to create a composition. And that is the skill to learn. And as this is the only focal length you can use, this compounds every time you use the camera. You really do start seeing the world in 35mm. And it doesn't quite have the same effect if you have an interchangeable camera and you've got different primes, you keep switching them around. It doesn't quite have the same effect as only having one single focal length. Another reason why this is a fantastic training tool is that you are able to carry this with you everywhere you go and use it whenever your creativity strikes. Having an easily accessible camera that just sits in your hand all day has infinitely less resistance to you pulling it out and using it compared to a chonky boy that you've got stuffed in your rucksack and you've got a tripod attached to your bag. Let's be real. How often have you been walking along and you've seen something that you could have taken a photo of and you've thought, I can't be bothered to get my camera out. I don't want to have that. I want to be able to just pull out my camera and take a photo anywhere and everywhere that I feel inspired to do so. Maybe you've got some absolutely wham forearms that you can carry around your 1DX Mark II 70-200 f2.8, but that's not for me. I want to have something that fuels my creative juices, and that gives me as little resistance as possible to being able to take photos. You can literally carry this camera with you in your hand all day, no questions, no problem. And as I'm sure you've probably seen, I use this little wrist strap from Peak Design, which I cannot recommend highly enough. It is fantastic. From here, I can unclip, so I've got my hand to sip a beautiful coffee, and as soon as I want to latch on, beautiful. That is the easiest, fastest wrist strap I've ever used, and it's really secure. I've never had any problems with it. This gives me absolute confidence to walk around town and to feel confident that this camera is going to stick to my hand. There is a link in the description if you're interested in it, but yeah, it's just a Peak Design wrist strap. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. And finally, it's built in a way that means that everything you want to document life is kind of just there, instantly available to you. And yes, I know that with different camera systems, there's a million and one different features, but none of them feel as accessible as this, or as tactile as this does. It's got a whole video on it, so I think it's that corner. Looking at the screen, can't work out. Maybe that corner, I don't know. But that explains in more depth exactly the settings and how I use this camera to document life. And so 1 year on, I can safely say that this camera has transformed my photography. No cap. I'm a significantly better photographer after owning this for 1 year. And whether this could be achieved on another system, who knows, potentially. But one thing I do know is that this camera has inspired me to go out and shoot photos more than any other camera has ever done. And after 1 year of owning it, there is literally no marks, no scuffs or anything on it. The lens cap, wherever it is, has a couple of marks on it. So it shows that I haven't been babying my equipment. It's just that this is built so solidly that it just feels like it's gonna last me forever. I take this camera with me literally everywhere I go, even when I'm doing proper client shoots, proper commercial shoots, and I use this to create BTS, and clients absolutely love it. If you are considering getting the Fuji X100v, I cannot recommend it highly enough. I've literally built this YouTube channel about this camera. That is how much I love it. I honestly, yeah, if you're on the fence and you're considering it, if it makes financial sense, do it. You will not regret it. If you do, leave me a comment saying that you regret it, because you'll be the first person and there'll be some sort of reward. I don't know. And Fuji, if you're watching this, I'd love a sponsorship for the Fuji X100Z or whatever you're going to call the next one, because I want to try it. I'm convincing everyone to get it because I love this so much. If you're still watching this video, thank you so much. I genuinely appreciate you watching all the way to the end, and I guess you must have enjoyed it in some way. So if you have, I'd appreciate a like, a comment, a subscribe, and yeah, share the word. And until next time, peace. There's also a link to free presets in the description, so if that's something that you want, then yeah, be my guest, use them, tag me in photos. I want to see what you guys create.